Hi guys, welcome to another UK Virtual School coaching tutorial. Now this month's topic is effective studying. My name is Sid, I'm the founder of UK Virtual School and I'll be doing this month's topic. So with studying, there's lots of different areas that we can focus on. With exams looming and also the end of year coming up close, it's a great time for us to have a look at this, because you can utilize the time that you have over the summer to prepare yourself for the new year. So let's have a look at what we're going to be doing today. And the first thing is we should define what studying is. So studying has two definitions. One is, from the Oxford Dictionary we've got, to devote time and attention to gaining knowledge, especially by the means of books. And the second definition is to look closely in order to observe or read. Now, that second definition is to do with when we say we're studying a bug on a leaf. We're studying something very closely, right? That's not the definition that we're going to be exploring today. We're looking at the first one, the one which is about acquiring and gaining knowledge. So let's have a look at some ways that we can do that. Now, the dictionary definition mentions gaining knowledge, especially from books. I think it's a bit outdated because books are not the only source of where we can gain knowledge from. So books are still up there. They're really important. We can get plenty of learning from books, but we can also gain knowledge from a teacher in a classroom, or we could be listening to an educational program on a radio or a podcast. Or these days, the internet is fast becoming the source of where we gain a lot of our knowledge and information from. And it's starting to replace where people would have utilized books and libraries in the past. Can you think of more ways that you can use to gain knowledge? TV is another one. You could watch documentaries and gain knowledge that way as well. You could study a subject through watching TV, or by going to a classroom, or by enrolling on a course online. So there's loads of different ways that you can acquire knowledge and study a subject. Now, all of these methods that I've mentioned so far are passive learning if you're only doing one thing. So for example, if you're only reading a book, if you're only reading stuff on the internet that you found, or you're just listening in a classroom, you're not actively making notes, or you're just listening to a podcast, you're not actually sat there making notes. These are all passive forms of learning. Now, there's been research done that if we have just a passive form of learning or any knowledge, 30% of all the knowledge is lost within the first year. So imagine everything that you've learned this year in school with us. We do 10 months of learning, right? So 30%, you've lost 3 months of learning by the end of the year. That's a lot. And this happens not just from learning in a classroom, but it happens from everything. So if you watched a program, or you watched a movie, or you read a book, you will start to forget a lot of what you initially knew. Within 2 years, you lose 50% of knowledge that you've acquired. Now that's shocking. So if you just go to a class and you're just listening, by the end of 2 years, you will have forgotten what you did 2 years ago. Half of the stuff is gone. And that's because our brain is wired in a way that it won't retain all of that information, especially if you don't come back to it. Because your brain thinks if it's something that's just happened once, it's not that important. And so it forgets about it. So what can we do to stop that from happening? Now, one way we can reduce that memory loss is to be active learners and to learn actively in classes. So there's been research done which suggests that if you learn actively the first time you acquire that new piece of information, you're going to retain it a lot longer. So what does that mean to be an active learner? How do we create an environment at UK Virtual School so you can be active learners? Let's have a look. Now, before we explore that further, I just want to have a look at how memory works. Okay, so memory has three elements. There's three core processes of memory. One is encoding, another one is storage, and the third one is retrieval. So encoding is when you're taking information and you're taking it into your brain. Storage is when you're retaining that information in your brain, and then retrieval is when you're recalling that information. Okay, and you could be recalling because a teacher asks you a question or in a test, or you're trying to remember something that you've learned. So those are the three different processes of memory. When your brain encodes new messages for it to retain in your memory, it links to pre-existing information. So things that you're already familiar with. Therefore, when you're learning something, if you can relate it to stories that you've experienced or things that you know of, it's a lot easier for you to retain that information. Now, I want you to pause there and reflect back. Is there a particular thing that you remember from the year? Was it a story that your teacher told you? Was it an experience that you could relate to? It usually is. If there's something that triggers a memory in you from your past, and then you're creating a new memory on top that links to it, it's going to help you to remember. This is why storytelling becomes really powerful. So your memory works better encoding, storage, and retrieval if it can be linked to emotions. So for example, if you're having fun or you're excited, you're more likely to remember something. Now, if you think back, you'll remember times when you hurt yourself or someone hurt you and how that made you feel. You'll remember how it felt when you got that amazing gift on Christmas or on your birthday. You remember those key moments because there were emotions also embedded with that memory. So by knowing that about your brain, how can we make those memories far stronger than they already will be? Because we're going to lose 50% of the information otherwise, unless we actively learn in the first place. So when that message is encoded in our brain, it stays there a little bit longer. So let's see how we can do that. How can we maximize our lessons? The first thing is you're more likely to retain information if you actively learn it for the very first time. Okay, so I've mentioned this before. If you actively learn something for the very first time, you're more likely for it to be in your memory a lot longer. So let's have a look at some ways that we can do that. The first one is be curious, ask questions. Now at UK Virtual School, we encourage you to ask loads of questions, right? We've got loads of different methods that you can do that. You can raise your hand, you can put things into chat. But if you're in a school classroom, make sure that you are actively asking questions, because your active involvement means that you'll remember the answer to a question that you asked. So that's one way that you can be more active and engaged in lessons. What's another way? Well, you could draw diagrams and make notes. Now, some students find it very difficult to listen and to make notes at the same time. I'm the opposite. I have to be listening and making notes, otherwise I don't listen very well. So you need to figure out which works for you, because if you can't listen and engage and make notes, then I would suggest that you make the notes after the lesson, because you can go back to your videos and make notes from that. Okay, so drawing diagrams helps you to visualize what's being discussed. Making notes also in your own handwriting helps you because you are engaged in two senses. You're listening and your hand is moving and you're making notes and you're processing that information. Same with drawing. So the process of learning turns from being passive, where you're just listening, to being active because you're engaging and you're processing and you're consolidating that learning and putting it down on paper. So that's a really powerful way to do this. How else can you be active in lessons? while you can engage in discussions. So some subjects lend nicely to discussions like English, for example, or even science in some ways does as well when there's something that comes up that might not be clear, or worldviews, for example, is a brilliant discussion ground for having lots of different topic information being delivered in that format. So engaging in discussions is a great way. Now you'll be encouraged to participate, but at the end of the day, it's up to you to be able to take part more actively. Okay, so if you are more shy in lessons, maybe have a think about how you can be a bit more active. How can you be more involved? And you might want to ease yourself in by writing more in chat initially, by answering questions very quickly in short phrases, and then expanding and having more longer discussions in class. And finally, if your teacher sets project work, which I know sometimes in science you get set project work or experiments, or in worldviews, or you might be set story projects in English, make sure that you engage in that work, because that will help you to maximize your learning. Okay, we can give you all the information that there is, but unless you actively engage, your memory can't do all the hard work it needs to do to be able to retain that information. Okay, you can have the best content out there, but unless you are able to recall it again and utilize it and make sure that you've understood it, it's not going to be very useful. So make sure that you're engaging in project work as well. Now, you might be thinking, how else can I make sure that my memory loss isn't so high? Like 50% is a lot to lose your memory in 2 years of all the content that you've acquired. So repeating content is another way that you can help your memory or your brain to form more stronger connections, so it realizes that this is relevant information. Now, if you learn things just once in class and you never come across them again, your brain is going to tell your cells, your storage information, your memory, that this information is not important. This human has never had to use this information again. And so it will press delete and it'll be gone forever. So each time you revisit a topic, it slows down knowledge loss and it improves your permanent retention of that piece of knowledge. How amazing is that? So let's see how we can do that to make sure it helps you, and how we're set up at UK Virtual School to help you to be able to go through content again and again. Okay, so let's go through that and I'll show you. So the first time you come to a new topic is introduced. Now it could be, and it's usually done in lessons. So you might come across a new topic in class for the very first time. Now, sometimes the teacher sets homework on a new topic. Okay, so the work's done slightly in reverse, where the homework is first set on a new topic, and then you kind of recap it in class. So it could be that you're expected to self-study initially. Okay, so there's two different methods here. The new topic is introduced. It could be introduced in class time, or it could be introduced as a pre-homework before the lesson starts. But either way, that's the first time you're coming across that topic. Now let's see how we're set up at UK Virtual School to help you recall that information, revisit that information time and time again. Right, let's have a look at number 2. So then the topic is extended. So if you were introduced the topic in class, you will be given homework on it. If you were introduced the topic for homework, you will be recapping it in class. So it's extended in that way. So you've now come across it twice. Now, if it's set as homework, at the beginning of the next lesson, the teacher will go through it again. So you've already recapped it 3 times, but 3 times is not enough. Okay, to be able to recall information and to be able to maintain it in your memory, you need to be doing it at least 8 to 15 different times before it becomes a permanent memory. That's a long time. So let's have a look at how else we help. So the third thing is to make notes. Okay, now we produce videos for you guys to be able to go back and to make notes from them. So we're not expecting you to write down every single word that the teacher is saying in lesson time, because you can't engage. You can't engage and be listening and be making notes and be doing diagrams. It's too much. So what we're expecting you to do, you have all these resources. You've got the video content. So go back through the video after the lesson, after it's been released, and make notes. And you may have already made notes in class, but you're building on those notes. So anything that you might have missed, anything that you hear the second time that you didn't hear the first time, you can add there. Okay, so already it's been introduced 3 different times. You've had the new topic introduced in class, you've done it for homework, you then watch the video and you've made notes and you've already recapped the homework. So actually it's 4 times. Let's see how many more times we can revisit the topic. Now, if you are studying in secondary with us, so year 7 onwards, so year 7 or GCSE, you will also have textbooks. So you can consolidate your knowledge by reading textbooks and adding to your notes. Okay, so that's a 4th way of recapping stuff that you've already done. Now, if you are in primary, you won't have a textbook, but you can do other things around that topic. Say, for example, that you're learning about times table. Are you doing something during the week that helps you to practice that times table? And it's a lot easier to pick short 10-minute bursts to recap knowledge when you're in primary school. And at secondary, you need a little bit more structure. So use your textbooks to consolidate the knowledge that you've already acquired. Okay. And then finally, you can extend your knowledge by using the internet to find additional information around that topic. So it's not just a topic that you've learned in class. So say, for example, you're learning about the heart and the different functions of the heart. Now, by extending your knowledge, you could look at heart diseases, you could look at heart conditions, you could be looking at how scientists have developed different inventions that go inside of your heart to keep your valves open. You could be looking at circulatory system. You could do all sorts of things to extend your knowledge around that topic. And the internet is amazing for this. And the same applies if you're in primary. You can find a topic, say that you're writing a story, and the story has to have a cliffhanger. You could go and find other stories which have cliffhangers. You could rewrite that and put it into your story. Or you could find a book that doesn't have a cliffhanger and create your own. So you're extending your knowledge beyond what was done in the classroom. And this can be done on your week off. So the first 4 things, the lesson, the homework, the making notes from the video, the consolidating the knowledge from textbooks, all can be done during your teaching weeks, your lesson weeks. And then extending your knowledge, or the project-based stuff, can be done on your week off. And it's a great way to extend that learning, to see whether you're interested in that topic and to find different avenues. Because if you find something that's really fascinating, you're more likely to remember that topic. So these are 5 ways that we've already set up for you in UK Virtual School. We've got a 3-week, 1-week off structure, which lends so nicely to project work. We have textbooks for secondary. We've got video content for you to make notes from. We have homeworks every week to extend the topic, and the videos and the lessons go through the homework as well. So there's 6 ways here, and you're introduced a new topic either in lessons or in homeworks. So that's 6 times, but that's not enough. You need to come back to your notes. Remember, we said at least 8 times. So we've set it up 5, 6 times, and then you need to come back to your notes maybe 3 months down the line, or rewatch a video, or go through stuff again. And there may be some topics that do come up again in class, but they may not come up for a whole year. And you need to be recapping a lot sooner. So if you think just by going to a class and listening and making a few notes, is going to be enough to remember everything. It's not, because your memory is not designed to work that way. So you got to give your memory a head start. And so these are some ways that you can do that. Now, one thing that I would suggest is to use your talents to maximize your learning. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, here I've got an image of innovation. Innovation is very much about making things and creating things. So if you are that kind of person that enjoys making things, what can you make that will help you to learn? Could you make a video? Could you make a song? Could you make a 3D project work on something that will help you to retain that information? If you're more like curiosity and you just like exploring and questioning and reading and finding answers, how can you utilize that talent? Can you get more books on the topic? Can you dedicate a time where you're just searching around the topic online? Utilize your talents to be able to maximize your learning. So I'm going to share with you, how did I study, or how do I continue to learn new things? So there's a couple of videos here. And just to take note, some of these videos are done more recently as an adult, and I'll tell you when. And others were done when I was a student, and I still have those notes, and I can share those with you. Now, this is my method of studying, and it might not be the same for you. So you need to find what works for you. And we're going to have a checklist at the end of different ideas that you can put into play. And it might give you some ideas to implement next year, or to try out over the summer, or to use before your mock exams this year. So let's go through the videos that I've created for you. Now, the first one I've done more recently. So these were topics that I covered a couple of years ago, and they were done on online teaching. And I've created colourful diagrams, consolidating knowledge, especially for topics for primary and year 7 level. Now, when you watch this video, have a look at the color that I've used, the fact that I've cut and I stuck stuff on, the fact that I've used colorful felt tip pens, and I've made my notes very visual. And that's so it's easy to learn, but also I can now use them as posters on walls. So have a look at that and see what you think. Right, guys, so I'm going to share with you some of my visual notes to give you some ideas. So here are some of my visual notes that I've created for different topics, and I'm going to go through them one by one. So the first one over here is biology, and this is looking at the process of photosynthesis, and it's got all the key information that I'm going to need. So I've used arrows to indicate what goes into a plant. And I've got other things like chlorophyll and chloroplasts are here. It's a cell in the plant. I've got the famous equation that I need to know. So all the information is on here, and it's done nice and visibly. And you can see that I've stuck these bits on as well. So that's one way. I've got here a water cycle. So this water cycle shows you the different things that are happening in the water cycle. You've got evaporation of water, you've got condensation, you've got precipitation, rain, surface runoff, infiltration, it goes into the soil, and then it actually leaves the plants through transpiration. So this is a water cycle. Again, it's done very visually, I should say. And then finally over here, you've got the electromagnetic radiation. So that was a bit of biology. Here you've got some physics. So these are the different EM radiations that come from the sun. And I've used a little block to show which ones are blocked by the atmosphere. And the only ones that go through are IR waves, visible light, and UV. This gives you tan, this heats up, this gives you light. And I've got a little bit of information about hydrogen and helium fusion. And yeah, that is some examples of how you can create very visual notes to help you study. Right, let's have a look at the next set of videos. Now, these were GCSE and A-level notes that I did when I was a student. Now, for these, I tested lots of different ways and to find out what would work for me. So I used exam specifications and highlighted stuff on there. I created flashcards. I created notes, like sheets and sheets of notes. And you'll see that sometimes I use colorful notes by using colorful pens. Other times I actually use colorful paper to help me visually remember that the red was a specific topic, the green was a specific topic. And then you'll also see summary sheets that I created where I took the entire chapter and put it into a one page. So have a look at some of these and see if this gives you some ideas of how you could do yours. Okay guys, so I'm going to spend some time talking you through how I studied for my GCSE exams. So this is for physics. Now for physics, this is the entire specification. Now if you're wondering what your spec is, you can download that from the Edexcel website. But this is what was, because back in the day, we did not have internet as widely available as you guys do. We were given these specs, and this was when I was at school. So this has lasted a long time. So what I did was I went through the spec, and if I can bring this closely, you can see that I've highlighted the bits that I thought were really important. Now this process takes forever because you can see there's loads and loads and loads of pages. Okay, so it's not a short process. It will take a while and you got to be patient. And you can see like I've added more notes on here. So the process is not a short one. It's a long process and you've got to be dedicated when you come to study, but testing out different variations of studying is really important. So let me show you what I did a little bit more closely. So I went through, so this was a topic of electricity and we were looking at circuits initially. So I went through over here and I highlighted all the things that I needed to know. So it talks about current through a diode. It talks through a resistor. So I highlighted all the key bits. Once that was done, and I did that for the entire spec, and look, there's loads. There's absolutely loads here, and they're printed really tiny. So when you print off the spec, this should be an A4 sheet, and this has been printed onto A5. So it's really, really, really long. And then what I went through and did was the spec doesn't contain any diagrams. Okay, so if I go over here, it talks about sound bouncing back, and it reflects off hard surfaces, echoes. So I actually did a diagram to show that. Okay, because it says here ray of light, change direction is refracted. Well, what does that actually look like? So I've drawn diagrams here to show what that looks like, because it's diagrams that you need to be familiar with as well. So I did all of that. And this was a bit messy because it's notes on lots and lots of pieces of paper. So next what I did was I grabbed some, so this is really old now. I made my own envelope here, but I grabbed some cards. Let's show you. So let's look at these ones first. So these are the cards that were produced by looking at the specification and taking out the key areas. So let me see if I can find the ones on waves. Oh, here they are. So you can see I've taken the information from the specification and I've put it into card format. So this refraction bit is the same as this bit over here. Actually, this bit is at the back here. So that's identical to this, but I've made it into nice little cards. I've put key definitions in. I put everything that I need to know that's from the specification, and I use the specification as a checklist. So I've produced cards. So this one's empty, but I've produced cards on all of these topics. Let me just show you these again. Again, not a small process. This is going to be a very long process. There's fuses and plugs, and I've got diagrams as well. But you've got all the information then. Now, the process of actively producing these notes, first of all, looking at the key areas, then condensing it and producing the notes actually helps you to retain information. So the process of producing these notes is helpful. And then you use these notes to help you answer questions, to recap. They're quite small. You can carry them anywhere. If you're going away for a while, you can take them with you. You can always have them on your desktop, and you can be recapping them constantly. Look, I've got all the key things over here. And this helps you to remember and retain the information. Now, these cards have lasted a long time for me. Right, another thing to note is I also took all the key equations, and this is worth doing as well. All the key equations that you might need to know. So look, F equals ma is what you guys needed to know as well. Remember, this is a different specification than yours. So don't worry if there's stuff that you aren't familiar with on here. And then what I did with the key equations was I produced these cards, and at the back it's got the units on there and what it looks like when it's been arranged in its most useful format. But I've got the triangle at the front of it. Now, some of them don't have triangles, like this one doesn't have a triangle. But these are all the key equations that I needed to know. And these would have gone on the wall at one point. I would have just gone through them and repeated and learnt what they were, like PIV. I know that the first letter I always say is at the top. So PIV, FMA, VIR, EVQ. I still know them because I remember them back then. And then this one's acceleration, change in velocity over time. And at the back, you would have had all the information on there. So all of these cards were produced back when I was 16 and preparing, before I was 16, I think, when I was preparing for my GCSE exams. And I still remember the formulas, and that's because I remember them really well and they got embedded in my memory back then. Okay, so this is just an overview of my physics notes. So let me show you some more. Right, guys, so these are my chemistry GCSE notes. And as you can see, I've taken one topic per coloured sheets. So here, this one over here on orange was my useful products from oil. So this was all about crude oil and all the experiments on there. I had a different colour for different things. So this was products from air. So everything here was about air. Here is about the atmosphere. And then I've got the rock cycle over here. So each of these topics was taken and put onto some different colour sheets of paper. And the reason why I did this was I realised that I was a very visual learner and I could remember the coloured sheets that a particular topic was on. So this process really helped me, but it's about finding what works for you. So again, these are notes. I had coloured paper, but I kept most of the notes pretty standard in one colour. And you can experiment. Is it the colour on the actual text that makes a difference? Is it the background that makes a difference? So this was detection, identification, flame tests. Like some people put these in colour, but actually I found that having it this way really helped me. So this was for chemistry, and you can see again, it's not a small process. This is stuff that I've done outside of school. This wasn't done during class. So studying outside of your lesson time is going to be a slow process. You need to create a timetable to help you do this. So I'm just showing you through my notes over here just to give you an indication. And this was when I was a student. So not as an adult, but as a student, what I did. I think my handwriting was neater back then, but you can see over here that these were my chemistry notes. Okay, so it is a process that you learn. It's very different from my physics, where physics was done on cards, because I was testing out what was going to be working for me and what wasn't. So this was for chemistry. Okay guys, let's move on to biology. So biology tends to have lots of diagrams, and you can see my notes also had more diagrams. I've taken, it looks like I've done this twice. So I've done animal and plant cells and realised actually colour diagrams are going to be better. But let me show you some of my biology notes. So you can see I've used a couple of different methods. I've got checklist to make sure that I've covered everything. I've got loads of notes on here, but then I use lots of diagrams as well. And as I go through, you'll see that there's more and more diagrams that are being used for this. So here I've done the nitrogen cycle, but then I've simplified it on top. Post-it notes are great as well, and I've done the same here. I've got a simplified version. Let me just, there, the carbon cycle. And then you can see the diagrams. So this is looking at bones, and I've made bullet pointed notes here. There's stuff about the bone over here. There's stuff about joints and the different types of muscles we have. Again, lots of diagrams. Let's have a look at what else I've got here. We're looking at fish now. And there's loads of things about fish. So I've tried to put everything onto one page, and you can see I've managed to do it with the fish. But then if I go over here, I've done some question and answers. So question and answers are a great way to also help you revise. So I've got here, how does the swim bladder help the fish to swim? It contains gas, air, oxygen, provides buoyancy. So I've written question and answers that I can run through of common questions that might come up based on the notes that I've made. And then I've got another section on birds, because that's what we had to cover, and why they're good at flying and the feathers. And there's more stuff on birds' wings over here and how it's been adapted. Look at that. We've got a dinosaur bird and a bat. And then I've done the same with the birds, question and answers. So experiment with different ways of doing your revision, because that's the only way that you're going to find out what works. So I've got loads of question and answers over here and some more over here. Okay, guys, let's move on to A-level. So here, this is particle physics. This was my A-level revision. And here I've got notes, but then I've put questions and also answers in here. And you can see that this was one topic, and it's a very, very long topic. So I've got all the notes over here initially, and I've tried to be as colourful as I possibly can. And I've used colour, and I've used diagrams. And then and more questions up here. And then if I skip to the end, now I'm a big fan of creating one-page revision sheets. So I've created, on this particular topic of particles, I have created this one-page, I spelt it wrong, it should say particle family tree, this one-page summary of things that were in that booklet. Obviously not everything can be included in this book, in this sheet, but it includes how all the links are made. So this is A-level physics, and it's got some key information down here, and it's got all the things that I needed to know for this particular topic. And another example of this is here, where I've taken the topic of momentum. So again, this was A-level, Unit 4, further mechanics and fields, A-level physics. And I've taken all the key formulas. Some of these formulas might look familiar. There's F equals ma. And I've put all the key information. So you've got the Newton's laws there. You've got the formulas. And you've got some graphs as well. Everything's been put on a page. So this is what I mean by summarizing things on a page. Right, so I hope you enjoyed watching some of my videos and seeing some of my notes and seeing how I did things. Now, you might be thinking that you have no idea where to start with making your own notes. So what we've done over here, now this month, we've done a really special extra. We produced a booklet that you can download, and it's got 10 different ways to revise and study. So this will give you ideas based on what your talents are. So for example, if you are a really good storyteller and you love stories, you might decide that actually you want to make a comic strip to explain concepts. If you are great at talking and you don't like writing things down, how about creating audio clips of things that you need to remember? If you are not so good at timekeeping, Pomodoro sessions are really good. So the way that I use Pomodoro sessions is that I'll get my diary, I'll put in chunks of what I'm planning to do in each of the Pomodoro sessions. So Pomodoro sessions are basically, you put a timer on. So I have a little timer clock, and I'll give myself 25 minutes to work on a specific task. So you could say 25 minutes, I'm going to create a summary sheet, or 25 minutes to watch this video and make notes. Okay, now if the video is 25 minutes, you might need to do 2 25-minute slots. But after 25 minutes, you take a 5-minute break and then you start again. So Pomodoro sessions are short bursts of learning time. Now, there's lots of different methods here. If you're great at, if you're visual, then you might want to keep an art journal. Now, all of these different strategies are going to be good at different times of your educational journey. So if you're in primary, for example, you won't need to have flashcards, or not so many of them, right? because there's not that much content and it's more learning and application. So you might actually want to create a video or art journals or comic strips or movement. Now, as you get older and you're closer to GCSE, you're going to have a lot more content to learn. So organizing your notes into one-page summaries is going to be more important. Having a revision timetable becomes more important. But play around with some of these, because I still used movement when I was doing GCSE. I still used a sort of art journal because I created colourful diagrams. Okay, so try these and see what works for you. So this month's homework on your coaching tutorial session is to reflect on how you currently study. Does it work for you? Now, you will know if it works for you if you are able to retain information. So go back to some of the topics that you covered in September. Do you remember them? Did you recap them again during the year? Or do you just leave it to just that lesson and the homework? That's not going to be enough, because by the end of the year, you're going to have lost 30% of your memory on the knowledge that you've acquired. And by the end of next year, you're going to have lost 50% of the lessons that you did this year. So is it working for you? What are you currently doing? Task 2, what talents or interests do you have that you can bring into your studying? Are you good at art? Are you good at sports? Are you good at cooking? Are you good at reading or telling stories? Or are you good at talking? How can you utilize those talents? Think about it. Now, we've come up with 10 different ways you can revise, but there's loads of other ways. And you might be creative enough to come up with your own methods of learning. Be prepared to adapt what we've given you, because not everything works for everyone. This is why we leave things up to you on how you need to learn, because we could tell you all, right, every single month we're going to do a one-page summary. You have no choice. You have to do it, right? And it might not work for everyone. Or we could tell you every single month we're going to have a test, which might work for some people, but it might not work for everyone. So we provide you a structure at UK Virtual School that helps you revisit content. So we've got the videos, we've got all of this, but how you actually utilize that is up to you. So in lessons, we encourage you to make notes, but making notes might not work for you. So engage instead, ask questions, do all of that stuff. We've got videos. Now, recapping videos once might work for you, or you might need to recap it 3 or 4 times. But we don't tell you that. We allow you, we give you the resources, and we expect you to figure out a way that works for you. Now, you might be like, that's a lot of responsibility. But this is what's exciting about learning. We're all so different. So it's about finding what works for you. Now, task 3 is to download the different ways to revise booklet and keep a record of what methods you have tried and what 3 you intend to try out in the near future. So what I want you to do is to go through that list. There's 10 different things over here. Take the ones that you've already tried. And then I want you to take 3 that you intend to do in the near future. Now, when you do them, then you can tick these and say, I've tried them. Then pick another 3 until you've tried all 10. Because until you try them all, you're not going to know if it works for you. So be prepared to try things that don't work. But you have to be open-minded and you have to go, right, I'm going to give this a really good shot because I don't know what's the best method for my memory retention. So have lots of fun. And I'd love to see what kind of techniques you try out. If you do some crazy visual stuff like videos and audio and one-page summaries, and share them with us. I'd love to see what you guys come up with, because I've shared with you my notes. So I'd love to see what your notes are going to be looking like. Now, with note making, just remember, it's not about how the notes look at the end. It's about the process. So if you make a mistake on your notes, don't chuck it away. Just cross it out and carry on. Okay, they don't have to look perfect. It's about the quality of the notes. not about how amazing that they look. Okay. And the process of making the notes is what you need. They don't have to be perfect. They're not going to be published material. Okay. You don't need to worry about that. So have lots of fun. Hopefully, this has given you ideas of how you can study more effectively. And we'll see you soon. Bye.